Hey everybody, welcome to Quizzitive Unite. In this session, you're going to be going through getting your organization ready for AI, a step-by-step guide. Before we get started, real quick, I wanted just to give you a couple of reminders. Now, ask questions. Even though this is recorded, and I'm recording this like 2 weeks ago, we still are going to make sure that we get your questions all answered. So don't hesitate to shoot something in there, put it in the chat window, and we will make sure that somebody gets out there. I always tell everybody there's no such thing as a stupid question. Everybody else is probably have the same question, and we are more than happy to get back with you. So just because you're watching this in the past or the future, whichever one that works with, you guys, we will still get your questions answered. That being said, this recording will be available for you all after the panels are conducted, so feel free to share this with anybody else, especially with a topic such as big as this. And as always, there are prizes here. So we are going to be giving away some great prizes, announcing at the end of the day. So please make sure you fill out your post-session survey. No survey, no entry. We want to make sure that you're doing both of those so that way you get access to some of these prizes, such as, we have the three $100 Amazon gift cards. There's the coffee machine, and a personal favorite of mine, the 12-month Wine of the Month Club. That will all be worth your time to sit down and send out something and help. Plus, it helps us as speakers understand, what landed, what didn't, and how can we better present to you in the future. Now, as far as me, so hi everybody, my name is Jimmy Ledbetter. I am the Vice President of AI Strategy and Solutions here at Quizzitive. I've been in the field of advanced analytics for 22 years, so I spent the bulk of my time in really the data sphere and the finance area, where I stood up data warehouses and data science divisions nationwide. So have several hundred of those in different industries that I've worked at. Sorry. During that time, I absolutely fell in love with data. I'm a data geek in every sense of the word. So I went and got my master's in data science. I'm currently pursuing a PhD at the same time. Dr. Ledbetter will come later, but it's definitely something I'm very, very passionate about. So as far as generative AI and all that's concerned, I've been familiar with the models since about the 2018 marker, back when they did what I call stupid human tricks. We did some things with formatting and stuff that was interesting, but nothing to write home about. Really got re-engaged in late 2022. I've been on the board of directors for a couple of institutions, and we all got together when the GPT 3.5 model started showing up, and we thought, holy smokes, this is going to change everything. And I haven't talked about anything since. So during that time, I've worked very, very closely with Microsoft, been fortunate to be a partner of theirs with how they go to market, worked with a lot of their people on how do we get people ready for generative AI. I had over 1,000 conversations in 2023, and everybody was asking pretty much some of the same questions. What do we do with generative AI? How do we know that this isn't the next blockchain? How do we know what we're going to do with it? So I've actually sat at a lot of the board of directors and said, here's what you really need to think about, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Getting ready for AI is not like it was when we were getting ready for modern data estates. It's not this massive, all-encompassing offering. It's actually a little bit more bite-sized. So worked with a lot of the Fortune 50, 100, 150s, 200s, all the way up. So, and I'm going to give you all the same advice that I gave them, and we see a lot of them are using a lot of that advice. So happy to show you all, like what I think is the secret to that success. So our agenda, we're going to go through the different steps here. So we just went through the intro. We're going to walk through the 5 steps, and then just end up with, what can you all do as far as getting ready for generative AI. Now, I always love to start off with just a couple of statistics. This one came out of an article that I pulled off of CNBC, and it said a global survey of more than 300 business leaders, and this was conducted by MIT's Technology Review and an Australian-based telecom company called Telstra, revealed that only 9% of companies are significantly using AI. I found that really interesting because I can't tell you how many board of directors I'm sitting at right now where people are saying we have to do something with AI, but now only 9% are really doing anything. And there were some really good insights that this article presented. There's a misconception about how easy it is to run mature, enterprise-ready generative AI. Its adoption may require companies to improve data quality and capabilities, privacy measures, AI skilling, and implement organization-wide safe and responsible AI governance. There are surrounding elements like app design, connecting to data and business processes, corporate policies, and more are still needed. Now, I agree with a lot of what's said here. When you're looking at generative AI, I tell everybody nothing's going to open holes in your armor faster than generative AI is. And it's very true. Um, but it's how do we do AI responsible? So I want to give you some steps that you all can walk through to really make sure that you're ready. So, step one, and this is if you get nothing out of this, this is really the key point I want you to pick up is think of AI in use cases. When we did data warehouses, data science divisions, all that stuff, you might have heard of like the medallion architecture. So if you have it, the medallion architecture is there's a bronze layer which we put everything possible. As long as it exists, it goes into that bronze layer. Then we realize that we love our people, but they don't necessarily keep the cleanest of data, and so then we move that into a silver layer. So what a silver layer does is that's where we kind of clean it up, we add some business logic to it, really get it a little bit more fit for prime time. Still not the final layer, but the final layer is a gold layer, and then the gold layer has everything, has all the extraneous data pulled out. It has like information put together. It's really what your data marts look like. Well, the problem is we think of AI a lot of the same way that we think of our data estates, and we just can't think of it that way. You don't want to feed every single piece of information that you have into a generative AI model. You just don't. You're going to want to feed in subsections of data. So what I want you to do is you start off and you identify the use case, understand what you're trying to achieve, and ensure that you have proper visibility, and more importantly, how are you going to measure it? The ROI discussions on these are astronomical, and it's great when you start at a use case. So when you're starting to talk about your ROIs, are you looking at something like that's going to save hours? Are you going to look at something that's going to save costs? What are you doing with it? So getting those use cases ready leads into that ROI discussion, makes it a lot more smooth. You also want to be able to describe what the outcomes looks like. Now, and it's interesting to say that because with generative AI, we typically think of everything in just a chatbot. Well, there's a lot more that we can do. We have a whole application space behind it. Do we want to write something to a SQL database? Do we want to export a document? Do we want to create a PowerPoint presentation? Do we want to create code? It's very important to know what the expected outcome is outside of a chatbot, because I will tell you, as you grow and mature, you're going to use more of the LLM or the large language model's functionality, but you're going to use it in ways outside of the chatbot. You're going to use it for extracting data. So that's very important to know. Start at a use case. Don't feel like you have to boil the ocean. Now, up next, and this, folks, if I could tell you the one thing that I see everywhere, it's we don't have our processes documented. You have to go back and do that. You have to understand how you run your business. I have so many customers who are like, the AI needs to be able to figure it out. The AI is a lot like your children. It's going to do certain things. It's going to do certain things well, but you have to give it very specific instructions. So for me, when I ask my kids, did you clean your room? I'll get yeah or no. If I said, did you clean your room? What did you do? How long did it take? And what's your next task? I get, why, yes, Father, I did clean my room. I put my stuffies on my bed. I made my bed. I cleaned my floor. It took me an hour and a half. And next I'm going to clean the bathroom. By laying that process out, it really helped my children understand what they were doing as far as cleaning the room. Now let's put this back in the world of AI. What you can do is there are ways that we can do things called orchestrations, which is one of the most powerful tools that an AI can do. And that is how we can break a task down step by step by step. This is something I've actually worked with insurance companies before, where we actually took their entire underwriting division and said, what is it that we can let generative AI do? And they said, oh, I want to get rid of this. I want to augment this underwriting process. It's like, okay, I need you to document the process. And they're like, we don't have that. So we spent an exercise and we actually documented what the process looks like. And when I say document, folks, I mean document. Step one, do this. Step two, do this. Step three, do this. I want you to go and get the name from this file. I want you to go and get the credit score from this file. I want you to print out. You've got two text fields. I want you to combine them into one, and this is how I want it formatted. By laying that out step by step, we can then take that back to generative AI, and we can let generative AI follow those steps and give you the outcome that you're looking for. Now, folks, this is going to take the largest amount of time. It really is. But the good thing is you can also do a lot of these things in segments. So the largest I've done it was several hundred steps. You can do something as small as 5 or 10, and that's okay. You can take that 2 or 300 and break it up into smaller tasks. That's absolutely fine. But you're going to have to want to start to document your process and work with somebody who knows how, like your operational change management works, or how, like how do work with your PM's teams to say, you know what, we really need to document this process. And once you do that, really the rest of this gets actually easier. Now, this next part is another part that I think is absolutely key inside your AI journey, and that is gathering relevant data. Now, I use the term relevant there because I think it's very important, because what a lot of people are doing right now is I want to throw every single piece of data I have at the large language model. And so many people are under the assumption that it can maneuver through terabytes and petabytes of data and give you the exact answer you want. That's simply not true. I'm gonna shoot you as straight as possible. That's not true. I like to tell people to think about it this way. I had the opportunity to testify in lawsuits early on in my career, and what would happen is when I was getting prepped to testify, what people would do is they would give me the relevant information for that use case or that case. And so then I knew what was I was supposed to testify on. And then I would testify and I would testify, to the best of my ability. Think about the AI in the same way. Is you only want to give it enough information to where it's going to logically answer that question that you need and not have the ability to do what we call a hallucination. Now, I'm sure we've all heard of the term hallucination, but let's talk about it for a second. A hallucination is where it says something with great authority. It just says, this is exactly what this needs to be, and it's wrong. That's not what we want. So if you give it too much information, you could cause it to, look at a hallucination. You also can get to the point where, you give it so much that it can only reason over certain amounts of documents, and then it's just going to make things up. So one of the best examples I have about gathering relevant data was I worked with a customer one time, and they wanted to help their tier one tech support. They wanted a chat bot that somebody could go in and talk to the tier one tech support. Well, the problem is they put all of the data inside a single index. Now, an index, forgive me, I'm a professor, I explain everything. So you have your vector store, which is your AI database, and then you have your indices, which each one of those indices is where you store out data. And so when we tried to put everything in one, the model couldn't handle it. We had, million plus tickets that we put in there, and the model simply couldn't handle it. When we broke it down into 5 individual ones, meaning software, hardware, voice over IP, printers, and I forget the last one now. When we put that in each one of the relevant pieces of information in its own index and we asked questions, the large language model did a great job with it. It then understood exactly what we were asking for. It gave us the right responses. But what we did was this is the part where our data curation is a little bit different than it used to be. because right now we want to put in relevant information. We don't really want to put in duplicative data. So if you have data, for example, like, oh, we're putting in trouble tickets, you don't want to put the same trouble ticket in multiple times. You just want to put in the right amount of information in there. And again, this goes back to the use case. What am I trying to answer? What is, like, if I was going to turn around and I was going to hand a set of steps to an intern and be like, here's the documents you need, here's the process to solve the use case. See, it's the same path as going through AI. So, um, so that was step 3. That was gathering relevant data. Now, this next one is important also. I think all of them are. So, but define data interpretation for AI. One thing that you can do inside of your generative AI is, the first thing I always do is I tell the AI who it is going to mimic. So that's something that we call a persona. So some examples are, I had the opportunity to work with a food and beverage manufacturer. And so they actually created a persona around a sommelier. So a sommelier is a wine expert. So we actually told the model, before we gave it access to any data, I want you to be a sommelier. I want you to know wines that are in uh, inside of the world of steakhouses. So I need you to understand how the steaks and the wines are going to pair up with each other. I was defining what it needed to know going into this. And then I augmented it with those data indices that we just did before. Now, some things that we also did was we created some definition documents to where we actually explained the data to the AI, and we could say, like, here's what each one of these fields means, and here's how you're going to interpret that. Because again, we have to we don't want to assume that it knows everything. We want to give it enough information to where it goes through and it makes a logical conclusion based off the information. And that's especially important with if you're handing it structured data. So what we've been talking about so far is unstructured data, which might be PDFs or Words or HTMLs or PowerPoints. But your structured data, it's very important because sometimes your databases aren't necessarily worded correctly. I remember in my old world, like we would have, BAL would be balance, or OFFCR would be officer. You have to tell the AI, hey, this is what this is what you're dealing with. Um, Now, also, it's in a quick side note, it makes sense to talk about, like in the world of structured data, only feed it the relevant information. Don't expect it to build out all the queries for you. Um, print out the data with those interpretations. In my old SQL world, we used to call that views. Print out a view for it and say, okay, here's how the headings are laid out. Here's how, here's what they mean, and then here's the data. Same thing happens for Word or Excel. Uh, so like with Word or Excel, um, or I'm sorry, mainly Excel, you can go through and, just send through like that big Excel document, but, make sure you have the headers to where everything is explained correctly. So this interpretation, we're really trying to make sure that we aren't letting the AI come up with its own data. We're trying to provide it what we call ground truth. And ground truth is very, very important. Ground truth is where we're feeding it the data, we're feeding it the explanation behind the data, and from that point on, it understands its rules. I don't want it necessarily going and adding on additional data points where I don't need them to. So that's defining the data interpretation for AI. Now, this next part is also another one that I think is very important to talk about, and that's determining the actionable outcomes. What do you want your AI to do? Because we're all, as of, I'm recording this on June 11th, 2024 at 1:45 p.m. Right now, everybody is very I'm going to use the term hung up on the chat. Where we are chatting with, that's the output. The output is this chat bot that I can ask a question. It gives me a response, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. There's a lot more, folks, that we can do with this. And that's something I think is worth talking about. So I want to give you a couple of examples because people might not know what they can do. So the first thing is the actionable outcomes. Do I want, after it goes through those processes I was talking about, do I want it to send an email to somebody and say, hey, based on the work that I just did, I want you to see the output, so now I can keep a human in the loop and the human can double check the work. Remember, it's a co-pilot, it's not an autopilot. So that is something that a lot of people aren't thinking about. Hey, we've got all these great systems out there. Do we want to update a system record? So I actually did this for one customer where this was a great use case. We were talking about sentiment analysis. So we were reading through tweets. And I know it's called X, but I still call it tweets. So anyway, we were reading through all these tweets, and one of the things that the customer was having an issue with was inside of these tweets, it would take like the original language, it would convert it to English, and then it would give it a positive, neutral, or negative sentiment on top of it. Well, that doesn't work sometimes when you deal with some languages that could be considered a little more harsh, such as like German or Russian, or that they might have a different connotation behind them, and so it might come across negative when actually it was a neutral sentiment or it was a positive sentiment. So what we did was we actually used, in a non-chat capacity, we fed through the tweets through a data pipeline. We put questions in there and we asked it inside of the native language. So don't convert it, inside of the native language. Tell me, is this positive, neutral, or negative? We also then said, okay, now go ahead and convert it and tell me if those two match up, because sometimes, people use translators and we need to know if what somebody said was actually made sense or not. So, and the reason I tell you that long story is because the output was we actually wrote this back to a SQL database where we said, here is your AI generated sentiment analysis. And that absolutely worked. Sometimes some of your outcomes is, what? I want the AI really to talk to itself. And, I just told you about a sommelier. So can I have the two, have it be a sommelier and can I have it be a food critic and have them talk to each other and provide me with the output of what that conversation is? The answer is absolutely. So, and then the final one that along that same lines is one of the things that we saw, which I thought was really interesting. We actually had it to where one would write code, the other would proof it. After the code was done, it was then sent to an engineer. The engineer would then look over the code and decide if it was ready for prime time or not. If so, they would go through and they would manually tweak it, get it ready, and then they put it through their traditional dev, test, and prod. So the output of that was the finished code base. But then finally, after he sent it, that the engineer, when he or she sent that to the sent that through to the code, we would then send it through a final agent, which would then document the code and then beautify the code, make sure all the comments were in there. And then it would write that back to a SQL database. And then we put Power BI on top of it. So now we've got a live action data dictionary that we can sit down and we can play with, and users can actually go through and ask questions however they want to. So this is a step that I think a lot of people are looking at. So they're not looking at it from a use case perspective, but what past the chat do I want this to do? Because folks, we're just at the tip of the iceberg as far as what this can do. All right. So in conclusions, I want to give you all a couple of tips that I recommend that you go forward with as far as, making sure everything's ready. The first thing is understanding your data is crucial for a successful AI implementation. Your business SME is more valuable now than they have ever been in the past. Understanding what the data looks like. And I'm not talking about the SQL database. I'm talking about your Power BI expert who has curated the data and put all the information into a relevant Power BI dashboard. That's the person who understands what the data story is. Making sure you understand, like when somebody's doing your stock forecast or your anything like that, or your board reports, that's the person who you need to talk to when you're getting your data ready for AI, is the person who is building out that final product, because those final products are your data sources. Did you know you could actually export a Power BI dashboard, and using some of the new GPT-4 Omni models and the computer vision models, that dashboard can be a data set. You don't even have to go back to the source data. You can go back and pull the picture of the dashboard and compare it to other pictures of the dashboard. Just a little late night conversation for you. But understanding the data, I think, is very important. Following your structured steps, you've got to ensure data quality, consistent, and relevant are vital and for accurate and reliable AI insights. Folks, if your data is not ready, AI will show it very, very quickly. So, but again, don't go back and feel like you have to clean the entire estate. You don't. You just have to clean what's relevant for that use case. So understand, a lot of people will use tools to get around it. We might clean in Power BI, we might clean in Excel. As long as the data's clean, it's fine. You can always go back and clean up your data at the source. And that's actually what I would prefer. But as you're prototyping and experimenting and running your use cases, you can go through and take cleaned data sets and build your entire experiment around that. And with all of that, with your proper preparation, your AI initiatives can achieve optimal results and drive significant business value. As long as you are making sure the data is prepared, make sure that you are giving your folks an accurate or an easy place to go in and experiment. That's the word I was looking for. Make sure that they can go and take that clean data, and we're putting them into a sandbox where they can go through and they can thoroughly test that data, thoroughly test the use case. And that's not IT. That's your SME. Your SME, give them that sandbox and let them go through and put everything together, start playing with it with the chatbot, and then have them follow those processes. And then that's what's going to help you build out your intelligent application. Well, I want to end with just thanking you all for hanging on with me. So I want to thank you for your attention. We want to help you make sure that your organization's AI ready. Here at Quisitive, we've got lots of different ways to do this. We have secure sandboxes that we can work with. If you're a managed account, we can leverage Azure funding in order to see about laying that out for you. We also have the ability to help lay out any type of AI platform, because you're at AI, those use cases those are going to need to go someplace, and the AI platforms are just an extension of your modern data estate. So we have the ability to really help you out with that. If you have any further questions, on the screen, here you go. You can see, like how you can contact us. Please reach out, ask questions. I guarantee if you have a question, everybody else has the same question, and that's okay. Again, I tell everybody, in 2022, nobody was talking about this, and now you can't look anywhere and not see the word AI. And finally, I just want to say very much thank you so much for being a part of this session. It's been very good to converse with you all. Send me questions, ask me questions. Please feel free to say I'd love to chat further about this. I'm an AI geek in every sense of the word. I would love to continue these conversations. So, closing, my name is Jimmy Ledbetter. I'm the VP of AI Strategy and Solutions, and I hope that you had a good 20 plus minutes with me, just going through and understanding how you can prepare your organization for the era of AI. Thank you.